Pecco Bagnaia went from dominating MotoGP's Japanese Grand Prix weekend to having an absolutely abysmal Indonesian Grand Prix weekend, crashing out of last place. But that wasn't even the headline element of how bad it was it, Val?
Yeah, no, and it was probably the worst weekend of Pecco Bagnaia MotoGP career. I say that not having encyclopedic knowledge of his pretty ropey 2019 season, but I can't imagine anything in that year, given he was a rookie, quite rose to the level of this. I mean, it already started wrong-footed. We always knew he wasn't great at Mandalika, but he was almost last of Ducatis in Friday practice, had the same lap time as Fabio Di Giannantonio, who's also sort of a little bit in the wars. He was last of the Ducatis in qualifying. It was actually a bit of a source of confusion that Marc Marquez tried to follow him for a fast lap a bunch. Presumably, Marc also assumed that whatever happened at Motegi means he's good now, and that didn't quite materialize. His best lap in the sprint was 2.1 seconds off. So Alex Rins was 16 seconds back from the winner. Pecco Bagnaia was 13 seconds back from Alex Rins. So Alex Rins was second last. So that should tell you the scope of the trouble. Then his best lap of the Grand Prix, which admittedly for him was quite short, was 1.7 seconds off. He was 14th after the start. He then went off at turn 1. His onboard actually cuts out in that moment, so it's not entirely clear why, but presumably just the usual thing. And then he ends up last. He's chasing after Somket Chantra, not really making that much progress when he finally falls off in a very slow crash that doesn't look suspicious to me, but a lot of people online have been talking about, like, did he just deliberately fall off the bike? Which obviously, no, he didn't, but the fact that people are talking about it probably tells you how good a weekend this was.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery and a lot of conspiracy chat around Bagnaia's weekend and his turnaround. Here's Simon to go through everything we've found out so far and what we know about what's really happening.
So, somewhere behind me in this myriad of flight cases that make up a MotoGP team in a flyaway race is the cause of and the solution to all of Pecco Bagnaia's problems this year. Because somewhere in here, there's a bike that actually after this weekend we know a little bit more about the specs of, because we've been able to have some conversations this weekend on and off the record with various people within Ducati, within rival teams, with Pecco himself, to try and get a bit of an understanding of exactly what has happened over the course of the last 2 weeks for him. It seems like now we're pretty aware that at the Misano test, he post-race on the Monday, he tried not Franco Morbidelli's GP24, but a bike that was in large part a GP24 machine, including the GP24 engine. We've got a little bit more of an understanding about the difference in the 24 versus the 25 engine, and actually it seems like it's not that big a deal. It's maybe not as big as the suggestion has been made earlier in the year, when we thought that maybe it was something related to a different crankshaft or something like that. It seems like it's something smaller, something more focused on durability than rideability. And that actually the big changes have been the frame, the swing arm, the ride height device, and the aerodynamics package. We know that Pecco's been using the old GP24 aero package for most of this year. We now know at Misano he went back to the frame, the ride height device, the swing arm that made up that bike. And then we know that he brought a fairly similar package to Motegi, where he didn't just win again, he absolutely dominated the weekend with the pole position, with the sprint win, a rare Pecco Bagnaia sprint win, and the Sunday race win as well. And then we came to Lombok, where we are right now, and the whole thing fell apart again like a cheap watch. This weekend has been beyond disastrous. So far away from the one that he had 6 days ago in Japan. Some of that, we know, is because this was a tough weekend all round for Ducati, because we were able to see that the new, harder, more heat-treated, heat-durable rear tyre didn't work for them, and we saw all of the Ducati struggling as a result of that. But not to the extent of Pecco, not to the extent of this huge drop-off that he went through from just last week to this week. So the question is now, where does the problem lie? And unfortunately for Pecco Bagnaia, both in terms of finding solutions and finding blame, it's looking more and more like the problems that he's having are within Pecco Bagnaia, because we're running out of other things to eliminate. He's got the bike he wanted. He proved in Motegi that he was able to win on the bike he wanted. So to come here and immediately lose it again, to be able to go so far away from that level and be completely off the mark again, there's only a limited number of answers to the question of what exactly has gone wrong, and Pecco Bagnaia is going to, I think, have to do some soul searching to try and figure out what those answers are before we head to Phillip Island in the next round of the championship.
So like Simon says, there's some soul searching to be done for Bagnaia here, because this cannot all be technical. But this feels like a relationship on the brink of collapsing now, Val, and we've seen this sort of thing before quite recently.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced by how the soul searching will go, or what Bagnaia will be able and willing to accept about his part in the current predicament. But to be fair, again, we should say that we don't know what his part is, and it is entirely possible that he will be completely and fully vindicated in terms of the spec situation, and maybe Ducati has overlooked something. It's clear that Ducati's position is that whatever differences exist in the spec cannot physically justify this, that it is impossible for the differences that exist to adequately explain the level of the performance drop-off. Bagnaia said during the weekend, used specifically the phrases, particularly after the really bad sprint, he said that he has nothing more to demonstrate, which, I mean, he meant prove, basically. He meant, after I've won the double at Motegi, I showed what I can do when the equipment is right for me. So now it's up to the team, basically, to deliver the right equipment for me, was the gist of his message. That slightly conveniently ignores the rest of the season, but it falls neatly into the theory of, the bike hasn't been right at all, and suddenly the one time it's been right, I've been great. During the season, Bagnaia has fallen back a lot on comparing the race times from last season, when the bike obviously suited him really well, to even when Marc Marquez has won races that Bagnaia has won last year, Bagnaia would point to the overall race time and say, well, that's either comparable to where I was last season or slower than where I was last season. Obviously, year-to-year variance in those races will happen, but when you take it as a whole, you probably can look at a trend. It's probably, I don't want to dismiss it as completely irrelevant, even though obviously there's going to be a lot of smoke and obfuscation there. But he has reason to be entrenched. He has reason to think this isn't his fault. He has reason to think, because of how things have gone, that he's not getting the help from Ducati that he deserves. Now, the issue there, of course, is once you're convinced of something like that, there might not be a great way out of this. And it's, even if he wasn't convinced of it, it's such a performance hole in some of these weekends that it kind of becomes untenable. And I think we've brought this up as an example multiple times already over the weekend, but it really does make you think a bit of Maverick Vinales in the 2021 Yamaha season that ended with him trying to blow up an engine and getting sacked. But it's a different relationship, because Vinales and Yamaha just never quite clicked for any sustained period of time, so it was increasingly more and more frustrating, even as he committed to new contract extensions. Things had never come together for any meaningful success that they wanted together. So finally, the parallel is when Fabio Quartararo came in and Vinales sort of continued in his Vinales form. I'm very confident that the arrival of Fabio Quartararo did serious damage to how Vinales saw himself within the Yamaha project, how desperate Vinales maybe got to find some sort of answers, or to find some new surroundings, to find something, some answer, some break from the rut. Bagnaia is new to the rut. It hasn't been a rut from the start of his Ducati tenure. It will have hurt that he lost the championship last year, but he will console himself knowing that he was consistently fast, winning all the time that season. The rut is new to this year, but the parallel is there is a new teammate who unfortunately just might be better, a lot better, or a little better is beside the point. But I've always seen that as a very important factor, because at the end of the day, your performance level has to compare to that guy always, every time. We don't have a theoretical basis for the bike, even when you have, Di Giannantonio also on the same bike and struggling occasionally. At Motegi, Di Giannantonio kind of looked a little bit like Bagnaia at Mandalika, not to that extent. He really wasn't good. His race pace really, really wasn't good, but he was not this hopeless. But we know that the oscillation in the bike's performance, it's huge. It can be absolutely massive. But it's how you then respond to it that is, I think, also a big part of what's happening here.
Yeah, that is the key, isn't it? It's the gap and the distance between the technical issue, the technical oscillation, and the rider's response to it. And I think this is one of the things where, I never thought we'd be comparing Vinales and Bagnaia in many or any MotoGP situations, but this really is a strong parallel in terms of there were such great days for Vinales at Yamaha, but then it could be, well, it literally was in some cases a week later, it was terrible, and then things went really, really wrong. So it's a very valid parallel, even if character and normal performance-wise, those are not two riders that you'd ever kind of play top trumps with. But if Bagnaia and Ducati are destined to divorce long-term because of the repercussions of this, I think it's too early to say that. We need to see what happens if there's going to be another flip back the other way. In the immediate future, Bagnaia is now Ducati's only fully fit works MotoGP rider because Marc Marquez has his injury from the Indonesia weekend. What does the rest of the season look like for Bagnaia and Ducati together after everything that's happened over this week? I guess it's hard to predict given that wild fluctuation, but is this something that can be sort of salvaged a little bit, or are both parties just waiting to get to the Valencia test, get on a different bike and try to start afresh?
I think it can be salvaged in the sense that this is a comparative game, and as people, this will sound ridiculous, but as this low being so low actually might be kind of good in a sense, because then even incremental progress in upcoming rounds will feel more significant than it would felt otherwise.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
it can't really actually get worse, can it?
Exactly.
No
like that's exactly it. And because of how weird Mandalika was in terms of the sort of the performance levels, because of the special rear tire and the whole the condition of the track and what happens in the fact that Pecco just does not like it, pretty clearly does not like it. He's going to go to some places that he gets on a little bit more, some places that are a little more recognizable. I mean, okay, who knows what's going to happen at Phillip Island. Phillip Island can be strange, but I expect him to be quite good at Sepang, and I expect him to be totally fine in the remaining European races. And that's going to feel good and maybe feel better than it would have if this hadn't happened. It's always a matter of lost race. We can't say what they're destined for, etc. But what we can say is that Jorge Martin and Aprilia looked unthinkable to be doing anything together a few months ago, and now they're kind of fine. So it's not fine by any stretch of the imagination, but we can't write the epitaph just yet.